Hello. Thank you guys for clicking on Achilles today. If you are new here, this podcast is about different cities and cultures from all over the world. My name is Hussein.
And my name is Hassan.
In this episode, we're going to talk about Baltimore, the most populous city in the US state of Maryland, with Baltimore native Michel'le. And where is Baltimore, Hassan?
It's located about 40 miles northeast of Washington, D.C. And also, Baltimore is known for its Maryland blue crabs, Johns Hopkins University, and Johns Hopkins Hospital, and so on. Please enjoy.
Good evening, Michel'le.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's good morning in Tajikistan right now.
Oh, right. Good morning. Yes. It's 5 a.m. over there. Right.
Yeah. How are you, Michel'le?
I am good. I'm good. How about yourselves? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're also doing great, and
We're also very excited about this.
yeah,
Right?
the preparing stuff was so cool because we learned about Baltimore. So
Right.
this is something we enjoy about this podcast because we also learn about some places, about how people live there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it because, anytime I can get a chance to talk about Baltimore in a great light, I'm in love with it for sure. So I want to thank you both for inviting me here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Michel'le, could you talk about yourself a little bit?
Of course. All right. So I'm Michel'le. I'm 29. I've lived in Baltimore since I was 9 years old. And I am currently living in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is like 15 minutes away from the DC line. So I'm currently no longer living in Baltimore, but all of my family still live there. So I frequent back and forth pretty often.
And how do people greet each other in Baltimore? I mean, what do they say if you ask them, like, how are you?
So really with a stranger, like if you're just like walking through the streets, usually it's, how are you? And then the person just responds back, I'm good. How about yourself? Usually they're not wanting to strike up a conversation. Usually it's just out of just politeness, because it's just a greeting back and forth, with a stranger. But usually if it's someone that usually it's, hey, it's usually a lot more dramatic than that. Yeah. And it depends on whether it's family or friends, like an old friend, usually it's like way more dramatic. But otherwise it's really no different than how anyone else would greet each other.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the only way we were taught at school, it just, I'm fine, thank you, and you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, there can also be if there's if it's a stranger, usually it's just like a head bob, sometimes, it could be a head bob and, just acknowledging that you're walking by each other. That's it. But otherwise it's usually just the same anywhere else.
I see. And how is the weather right now there?
Well,
Is it cold?
So right now we're entering spring here. And right now it's it's really like in the 50s, like the high 50s, and this is all in Fahrenheit because here in the US we follow the Fahrenheit rather than Celsius, and I really have no idea what how to translate that into Celsius. But usually it's in the high 50s to the 70s, high 70s. Like this past weekend we had a beautiful weekend here. Didn't even have to wear a coat. But right now it's so right now it's very beautiful, and I'm taking advantage of that. I had my sunroof open as I was driving down the highway today.
It's pretty much the same like in Tajikistan right now.
Fahrenheit? Okay, awesome. What is that in Celsius?
It's about, it's almost 20, right? Yeah, right now maybe it's about 12 degree, 12 in Celsius. Yeah, I don't know how in Fahrenheit.
Right.
So, but in the daytime it's
It's about
quite
20.
warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20.
Okay, nice.
how would you describe Baltimore in one sentence?
I would have to say it's a very like hometown, very working class, blue collar type town. That's very liquid.
Hmm.
Yeah, so to extend on that, people in Baltimore, they're not very pretentious. They're very humble people.
Mm.
So if you want to go there and relax and have a beer, but you don't want to like wear a tie, you can go ahead and do that. Yeah, no one's really judging you here. It's very laid back. And
Hmm.
I feel like the people like in my opinion I think the people here are pretty friendly to strike up a conversation with if you were to like walk into a bar and want to have a drink and you're sitting there by yourself. Usually people are very friendly in that way. But and to say that it's very liquid, I'm gonna spot on Baltimore, like Baltimore City and Baltimore County are two different areas.
Hmm.
The city is probably the one that usually has a lot of history there, but the county is in the suburban area of Maryland. So
Hmm.
it's like a totally different lifestyle or culture when going in and out of these two areas. So yeah, it could be very liquid in that way. Like the city life, like the people are a little more blue collar and well, not even, but yeah, a lot of them can be like very. They definitely act way different than the people in the county. In the county, generally, it's all like white picket fence with families, single family homes,
Hmm.
versus like in Baltimore City, there's what you would call a row home, which is generally like it's the same thing as a townhouse, which are houses that are all attached together.
Hmm.
Yeah. Here in Baltimore, we call them row homes versus a townhouse, although they're like the same thing. It's just, it's, I guess, what is it called? It's really like it's called like a regional dialect kind of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah. So yeah, but that's like pretty much how to describe Baltimore for sure.
I see. Yeah, I've heard about the accent. So how do you say Baltimore? I mean, locals. You don't say Baltimore, right?
So I do add the T in Baltimore,
Hmm.
but locals, yeah, locals would call it Balmer or Baltimore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What about Be More?
So be more is just
Be More.
yeah, be more is abbreviated, which
Hmm.
generally you would
I see.
see. Yeah, you would see that if like somebody was wearing a T-shirt, like a screen printed T-shirt, and it would say "be more" on there. It's mainly used in more urban settings, but yeah, a local would definitely say Balmer or Baltimore. When they don't really,
Yeah.
yeah, use the T too often. Usually that T becomes a D, LDA,
Hmm.
Baltimore. Yeah.
Wow.
Baltimore. Wow.
I see. And what about Did you eat?
Did you eat? Yeah, and that's also used as well if you're and the people here kind of speak a little fast, so
Yeah.
did you eat is definitely a thing that's used, as well as which my fiance rags on me about this all the time, but instead of saying ambulance, I say
Hmm.
ambulance. Ambulance.
Ambulance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it is so fast that Did you eat? You said just like Jit,
Did you eat?
right? Yeah, Did eat? Wow. Yeah, that would be hard for some travelers if they go to Baltimore.
Yeah, it's pretty. So I have family also in Alabama, and neither one of us can ever understand each other. Especially if I'm not very
Wow.
careful to, actually specify
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say. For example, shower. I'll just say
Mm-hmm.
shower, and people would be
Wow.
like, "What are you trying to
Shower.
say?" Shower, or instead of like fire, it was like like
Mm-hmm.
FAR.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, or words like my best friend says this all the time. He's from Baltimore. He'll say
Mm-hmm.
wash instead of like wash. Like, did you wash the clothes today? He'll be
Oh,
like, he will add a R,
wow.
and I'm not sure where that R came from at all, but it's totally normal. It's so normal to hear somebody say that here, like wash or Washington, and I'm like, that's not how you say it.
I see. And but your English is sounds different. Is it because you've been living in Washington,
No,
D.C.?
no. So generally, like the people that use that kind of Baltimore dialect, they're from areas in Baltimore like called like Highlandtown. Um, Usually, like those accents are very thick in like those part of Baltimore, especially like in like mainly like white Baltimore people.
Mm-hmm.
Usually like it's definitely thick within there, or like Dundalk. Dundalk is in Baltimore County. The accent comes up there
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been speaking with people that aren't from Baltimore, and usually they call me out on stuff like that. So I've learned to fix it a long time ago. It's just sometimes if I'm speaking really fast or if I'm like really in the moment, I'll accidentally like slip
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say something such as ambulance. Yeah.
Wow. All right. What do you think might surprise foreigners if they visit Baltimore?
Um, let's see here. So, what really surprises foreigners, I guess it's just like the amount of stuff that's that you can do here.
Mm-hmm.
So like unfortunately in the media it's kind of like pointing Baltimore in a very bad light. They
Yeah.
show, yeah, like a lot of crime in the city, but I hope people understand like in impoverished areas there's generally going to be crime, and that pretty much holds true in any city in America, or I guess in anywhere in the world, honestly. So I think people like when I think of Baltimore, at least when I say that I'm from Baltimore, everybody like cringes. They're like, "Oh, you're from like a really rough area." But there's like so many things to do here that that goes beyond like the crime that the media always puts out there, and you'll be perfectly
Mm-hmm.
safe doing these things, such as like going to like a baseball game like the Orioles. Like I love going to see the O's play, which another dialect here. How about them O's? That's generally
Mm-hmm.
what people when they're talking about the O's. Usually the sentence starts like that, or the Ravens, which is our football team here. There's a bunch of festivals that are here that are generally free. And if you ever want to learn about like different cultures in Baltimore, those festivals are a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And like we have Latino Fest here, we have the Polish Festival, we have Afram, which is the African American Festival. So like those are all free things to do here in Baltimore, and there's like a lot, and this is what I miss from like now that I live out here in Silver Spring. But I definitely miss all of the mom and pop restaurants that are in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, the food there is very cheap, and it's like made with love. So, if the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
like the kitchen people will definitely remember who you are if you frequent there. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go missing, they'll definitely make it known that you haven't been there in a while. But I
Oh,
definitely miss,
nice.
yeah, I definitely miss going to like the restaurants and stuff there. In Baltimore, crabs, like the blue crab is very common. Like very, if you want a
Mm-hmm.
blue crab for the first time, Baltimore is the place to do it, or in Maryland in general is the place to do it. So when foreigners do come here, definitely try the blue crab or a crab cake, which is just crab meat and like a breading that's like mashed all together, into like a cake form, and usually you can eat it, by itself, or you can eat it like a burger between two buns.
And blue crab, is it because the color is blue?
Yeah, so the blue crab, yeah, it's blue when it's still like in the ocean, or the bay,
Mm-hmm.
the Chesapeake Bay here. But once you cook them, when you steam it, it turns red. Yeah, and usually they're steamed with like with beer, and you could put like Old Bay seasoning, which is our local seasoning here in Maryland at the McCormick Spice Factory, which is located in Hunt Valley, Maryland. I think it's only like found here. I mean, well, actually, it's only made here in Maryland, but you can definitely buy it at your local grocery store. But I think a lot of people outside of Maryland don't really know what it is. But any type of seafood or any kind of meat, honestly, I usually sprinkle it on anything. And usually the crabs are cooked with that. Like it's a huge like thick layer of the Old Bay seasoning on top of it. It's kind of salty, but it's really good.
I see. Ah, and I've read that when it comes to making beer, it has quite a history, and we should thank Baltimore for six-pack beers.
That's new to me.
Oh,
The six pack, did it mention anything about Natty Boh? It's
yeah, Naribo, yeah.
yeah. The nickname for National Bohemian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I didn't know that they created the six pack, but you definitely want to try the beer. It won't be your favorite, I'll be honest with you. I've only had the beer during my college years because it's cheap beer, and usually a lot of the local college bars they sell the beers for like $1 because it's so disgusting, but it's definitely something to try. Yeah. Yeah, but
I see.
yeah, but it's definitely like a local, like it's very cheap local college beer that you can get for like a couple bucks if you're, during your college years you're kind of broke. So yeah. But I don't know anyone that says Natty Boh is their favorite. But it's a local favorite because it's like it's from here.
Yeah. When you drink beer, do you have something with beer? I mean, do you snacks? Yeah.
So sometimes people like to have like mixed nuts, with the beer, or, like Utz potato chips, which is spelled UTZ. It's a brand that's actually made in Hanover, PA, and Hanover, Pennsylvania. But it's a common potato chip that's eaten here in Baltimore. So generally there's like a bowl of chips that people will have with a beer. Usually it's a beer and a cigarette, honestly. But yeah. But yeah, nothing really special with the beer. Some people just have it by itself.
I see.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like to drink a beer with the crabs. Like when you're eating a crab, because you have to break the crab open yourself. Because it's when you eat it, it's still in its shell, like in the same form. But usually people like to have like a beer with their crabs.
Oh, I see. I've also read that the nickname of Baltimore is Charm City.
Yes, Charm City. And so I never really knew why it really gave why Baltimore has like the nickname Charm City. But I definitely know that Baltimore has its own charm to it for sure. So I'm thinking maybe that's why it was given that kind of name.
I see. And if you could choose 3 aspects of your culture to put in a time box for the future, what would you put in it?
All right, so 3 aspects. So in my culture, which I'm African American, if you didn't know already, but in my culture, Usually the grandmothers, which they're the matriarch of the family, and I'm not quite sure if this is different in anyone else's culture, but usually they're like the glue of the family. So usually if it's like a holiday, or whenever she felt like having the family over, she would she would throw down in the kitchen with food, um like all of my favorite foods, which in Baltimore, generally the food, since Maryland is like right next to the Mason-Dixon line, which is the line that divides the North from the South. We have a lot of Southern heritage here, but it's because we're so close to that line, it's a blend of like Southern and Northern culture here. But my family, my grandmother, she's from the Eastern Shore in Maryland, which is like right, it's literally like right near the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. But during like the slavery in America, a lot of my family, they were on that Eastern Shore, and then when my grandmother was still a child, her and her family moved to Baltimore. So she brought that Southern food with her, like the recipes and all. So food is like really, really important to me, which I should, now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably reach out and get some some recipes from her. But like collard greens, which is a vegetable, it's boiled with pig feet, which gives it that ham taste to the collard greens. It's not very healthy, but it is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she likes to make that for me. And I know that's like, that's pretty, I think it's pretty common in the South. And she'll make like fried chicken and like honey ham with mac and cheese. So like food really brings like the family together. So that's definitely like one thing I would like to put in a box, so people will, my kids and my kids' kids will, remember, that's something very important with family. I would have to say, family kinship would have to be second. Because when I was very little and, I would spend a lot of time with my cousins. My mom is one of 8, and then my dad is one of 11. So what yeah. So, on my mom's side of family, I have a lot of cousins that were, roughly around the same age as me. And, on my dad's side of family, I am the very last grandchild. So I'm the baby. All of my other cousins are older than me, like actually like a whole generation older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like your cousins are like basically your first best friends. Yeah, so that's definitely something I would like to put in the box, because I am technically an only child. So when I do have kids, I don't know if they'll have that same, upbringing as I did, because then my my fiance, his family, like his sister has already started having kids, and I think it'll be a while before I have kids. So like it's not like they'll be around the same age like I was with my cousins. And then lastly, I would have to say music. So there's music that my family would play during a cookout, which cookouts are basically like a barbecue where you have family and friends over and like a grill, and you'll grill chicken, hot dogs, hamburgers, corn on the cob with like butter and that Old Bay seasoning that I talked about earlier. Yeah, so they'll like throw down on the grill and have like ribs and stuff. But there's like certain music that's usually played. It's usually pop music from like way back when our parents are younger, which like I think you'll probably be very familiar with some of them, like Michael Jackson, or Earth, Wind and Fire, The Temptations. yeah, so generally they would play music like that and anything else that was around that time. Like anytime I hear these songs, I definitely like think back to like when I was a child, like playing in the yard while like all the adults are like, you know, cooking and drinking beer and stuff like that and playing card games.
Mm-hmm.
So I, again, like I think unfortunately, like, you know, when I do have kids, maybe they might not be able to experience that, and you know, it's not always a bad thing, but you know, I would like them to know, like, you know, this was my childhood growing up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What culture besides your own do you admire and why?
So, right, my last semester of college, I went to Taos University, which is in Baltimore, as well in Baltimore County. See, I just said it, Baltimore. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So my last semester, I did a study abroad in Madrid, Spain, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely admire the Spanish culture so much because like I feel like the people there they basically like work to live, not live to work. They were very laid
Mm-hmm.
back. And like, you know, things were taken easy there. Like here in the US in general, actually just the East Coast, honestly. The East Coast of the US can be very rushed. And everybody's like thinking of themselves. And yeah, it's just like very rushed. Everybody's thinking of themselves and they're not really you know, taking a minute to like walk around a park and like, you know, look at stuff. When I did my study abroad in Spain, I noticed that people would stay at the dinner table way longer than here in the
Oh.
US.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, no one would have their phones out texting, everybody was talking, and the waiter, like you have to, like if you're ready to leave this restaurant, you have to like flag the waiter down to you know, get your
Mm-hmm.
check, to check out,
Wow.
versus, you know, here in the US, generally the waiter is checking on you at least like every 10 minutes, and then, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
guess they expect you to be out in within an hour if you're not, you know, buying anything else or not drinking. But you know, and
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So in Spain, I definitely love like the slower living, like the slower pace living. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely enjoyed being able to take a nap in the middle of the day, the siestas.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that should be something everywhere. Like you feel much happier and relieved. Like why can't, you know, why can't the US adapt this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And for some of our listeners, can you explain what is siesta?
Yeah, so a siesta is generally found, you know, it's only done in, well, I don't know if it's only done in Spain, but it's very, you know, common in Spain, where in the middle of the day, so like, I believe, I want to say it was like 2 to like maybe 5 p.m., all of the stores would shut down, and as well as like office buildings, they would shut down and people would go home and like have their lunch and family time
Mm-hmm.
and a nap. And then yeah, and then after that, you would go back to work, and you know, finish up your work day.
Mm-hmm.
I know in Spain, it's a common complaint that people may not like it because it extends your day longer. So, you know, here in the US, we're usually done, you know, if you work in an office building, you're done your workday by like 5,
Mm-hmm.
5 p.m. But in Spain, because of that siesta, that midday siesta, it usually, you know, extends your workday out to like maybe 8 o'clock p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I could definitely see how people would get like tired of that, and you know, they're just ready to be done with their workday already. Yeah, but definitely I definitely miss it there. I definitely miss, like, you know, after class, after I got out of school, it was very common to see people at like a little cafe having like a,
Yeah.
you know, a little cup of tea or a or like a little cup of coffee, or what is it called? Chocolate y churros, which is like this cup
Oh,
of
sounds nice.
yeah, like it's a cup of melted chocolate with like a cinnamon stick, and you dip the stick into like the chocolate, and it's like a bunch of like gooey yumminess in your mouth for sure. It's delicious.
Wow.
But I was so sad when I left there. I actually cried on my way, like as the plane was like pulling off on the runway. I was like crying as I was leaving.
Yeah. Okay. If a group of people just came to your hometown from overseas, what advice would you give them in terms of maybe to? We already said that what to eat, maybe places to go, or to be careful of.
Yeah, so well, first off, to be careful. I mean, the media isn't wrong with the amount of crime, but it also like depends on where you are in Baltimore. So you definitely want to be aware of that, be aware of your surroundings, but you should be, you should take care of your surroundings when you're anywhere in the world, honestly. So definitely that's something to watch out for. But I wouldn't go around, acting afraid of everything, because if you do that, then you just like draw attention to yourself, and people are definitely going to, people may bother you if you make it very obvious that you're a foreigner.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah, some places to visit in Baltimore. I would definitely advise going to like the Walters Art Gallery, which is a really cool museum to go to. I think it's free. I believe it's free. But yeah, it's definitely something to go see. There's the National Aquarium, which is right at the
Hmm.
harbor. Well, actually, one of my school dances was there, but when I was in high school. But the National Aquarium is literally right at the Baltimore Harbor. So while you're down at the harbor, you can while you're at the aquarium, you can also walk around the Baltimore Harbor, which is a very beautiful view of of
Yeah.
that area. It's very touristy, so it's generally very safe too. I would
Hmm.
definitely advise taking a ride on the water taxis. The water taxis can take you to different parts around the harbor area, such as Federal Hill or Fells Point. Fells Point
Hmm.
and Federal Hill, as well as Canton, are some pretty live areas if you're a young person that wants to go out clubbing and bar hopping. That's kind of where I spent
Hmm.
all of my early 20s. So yeah, that's definitely a place that you want to go. And there are a lot of dive bars there, so it's nothing fancy, but you'll definitely have a good time there.
Hmm.
There is a huge like clubbing area. It's called the Power Plant Live. It's a huge venue with like a bunch of like bars and clubs in it. It can be a little expensive because you do have to pay to get into the venue, and then each one of these bars or clubs might have a cover as well. So I never really went that often, but I definitely know it's a pretty fun place to be if you're if you're a young traveler that want to meet
Hmm.
people. For religious people out there, or anyone actually, it's super beautiful. But there's a basilica. It's called the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's beautiful on the inside. I believe they offer tours still. I haven't taken a tour there since I was in my early 20s, but I think I'm pretty sure they still do tours of the inside of the basilica. There's there's like a huge library that's there, it's right across from the basilica. It is called the Enoch Pratt, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's a great place if you ever want to take someone on a date there. That's a really cool place to meet up.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And there's also Peabody Conservatory, which is it's a music school. It's part of the Johns Hopkins University, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's I tried to audition and go there. I did not make it, unfortunately. Poo hoo. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's the Peabody Conservatory is gorgeous to look at in the inside. Actually, it's pretty common for weddings to be held in the library area, which it's like I think it's like 4 stories high, but it reminds me so much of like Harry Potter, like the way Hogwarts looks in the inside is so gorgeous. Yeah, it's just very
Wow.
expensive to hold a wedding there. But those are a few places that I would definitely tell people to visit for sure. But yeah, my number one thing would definitely be the food.
Yeah. What is the best time to visit Baltimore in terms of the weather, festivals?
So the best time to come here would be like spring, summer, and fall. Our winters here are kind of brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, in order to see Baltimore, you don't want to come in the middle of winter because you'll be freezing. You might accidentally slip and break your hip on ice. um, yeah, it's definitely no Chicago level of cold, but it can get a little dangerous here if people aren't used to it. But spring and summer is generally when we have all of our festivals here, which I mentioned earlier, AFRAM, which is the African American Festival, Latino Fest, and the Polish Festival. And there's many other festivals that are held in Patterson Park, which is
Mm-hmm.
this huge park that's in Baltimore City. There is a art festival that's called Artscape. Generally, we joke here in Baltimore that Artscape is held on the hottest day of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last time I went there, I almost passed out because it's so hot. But as long as you stay well hydrated, you'll be fine. But Artscape is where there's like many local artists that showcase and sell their art during this festival. There are also there's many concerts that happen here, and honestly, you can watch musicians perform before they make it big, which is something really cool to see. And there's also like
Mm-hmm.
smaller stuff that's happening inside of the local art school that's down there, the art college, which is called MICA, which I believe it's abbreviated the Maryland Institute of College of Art. I believe that's how you say it.
Oh.
But generally, the school will let you let performers perform in the inside, which I did many years ago back when I was in orchestra. But yeah, we performed inside and we got to it's like many people like donated money for like different causes and stuff, but that's definitely something to see. But that's held in the middle of summer, so definitely keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
spring and summer. Okay.
And one thing I'm a little bit confused about, in Wikipedia, it says that Baltimore is the largest independent city. Is it in Maryland or the US in general?
Yes, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe when they mean that, like it's Baltimore City. There's Baltimore City and there's Baltimore County. But like I believe like it's a Texas situation. Um, but like the taxes that like Baltimore County residents that ones that they pay annually isn't going to Baltimore City. So like Baltimore City residents are paying for their own taxes for Baltimore City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the
Mm-hmm.
money isn't like bleeding back and forth.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like two separate like yeah, they have a mayor and then in Baltimore County we have like a county councilman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see. And is there anything else left or you would like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend coming here. Please don't let the media steer you away. It's definitely a great place to visit that is actually affordable. And it's definitely like it has its own like little hidden charm to that you could see here. It's not like it's something big like like going to like Los Angeles. Everybody knows about Los Angeles or New York. It's definitely something somewhere on the map that's very peaceful and very affordable to see. And I think people will definitely appreciate coming here for sure.
Yeah, sometimes we need more peaceful place.
Yeah, I definitely agree, for sure. Because, like there's so many places that are always known, to go visit. And then, there's definitely places that you want to go that's like kind of, off the beaten path.
Yeah, exactly. Michel'le, thank you so much for taking the time. We really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for letting me share this with you all. I definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks a lot. And until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can send us an email at theachillovs@gmail.com. And you can find us on all the major podcast platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, and so on. Until next time, goodbye.